Hello and welcome to the 1895 podcast with me, Thomas D.
And me, Rob Cockerill.
And Rob, this is a bit of a different episode to what we used to. We're not in the studio today, are we? Those watching might be able to see that we're clearly not in our studio.
Location, yeah.
But, for the benefit of the tape, we're on the ground in Utrecht and just a few hours out from our Specialty Gas Summit 2025.
Absolutely. Our second time here in Utrecht in the Netherlands. Our second time this year in the Netherlands, actually. We're in Rotterdam, of course, back in mid-March. Yeah. So we've passed through that Schiphol airport a few times, haven't we, recently?
And it's great to be back, isn't it? We flew in yesterday and quite a big day here yesterday.
Yeah, I think it's quite big across Europe, isn't it? A public holiday, Whit Monday or Pentecost Monday. And when we arrived, we went down into the old town, didn't we? And we had a good taster of the vibe in town. It was nice.
Yeah, soaked in a bit of culture, saw what the town's all about, and and now great to be back here at the hotel, at the conference centre, and getting ready for this event, which is kicking off in just a few hours' time. As I said.
We've seen people arriving around the venue, haven't we? The atmosphere is building slightly, and then registration will be in the next few hours.
Yeah, we're tucked away a little here, just to the side of the event, spot, but we can see over our shoulder all the setup going on and the staging going up. So really looking forward to the next few days. Yeah,
a stage that we'll both be on in the next couple of days, and the whole roll call of esteemed speakers. And
of course hosting a live 1895 podcast, which listeners should keep an eye out for and will be on our feed in a week or so time.
Yeah, certainly. And loads of insights into the specialty gases business today, and a whole range of topics within that. So really looking forward to that.
Yeah, really looking forward to that. But let's kick this episode off with something we've not done for a little while. We did a few of them over the last year or so. We did one live on stage a few years ago, but that's facts or stories relating to the year 1895.
The biggest one, go on.
The biggest one, I have to start, it comes from the name of this very podcast, and that is, it's 130 years since Carl von Linde's liquefaction of air and sort of the birth of the IG business as we know it today. So that's the big one. But
the founding father, or one of the founding fathers, we should say.
But I know you've got a few more, I suppose, niche facts about 1895 and the region that we're in.
Yeah, niche, loose. Might tie in a little bit with our Spec Gas 2.0 event here. So 1895, the X-ray discovery. German physicist Wilhelm Röntgen discovered X-rays, demonstrating their ability to penetrate certain objects and produce images. So that's an interesting one. And that's not just spec gas related, that ties into a whole range of industrial gas topics, really. I think there's also some discovery around cinematography. Couple of interesting ones, though, definitely related. Radio development in 1895, did you know? Alexander Popov demonstrated the transmission of radio waves using his lightning detector. And then Guglielmo Marconi, Marconi, let's just stick with that, also sent a wireless Morse code message over a distance in 1895. Here we are, 130 years later, as you said, doing a podcast. Crazy.
Some fantastic facts and, tie into this podcast, like you say, and the event that we're about to hold over the next few days as well.
Yeah, and one more, although maybe a little bit looser, semiconductor related. This was in 1894, not 1895. So a bit of a crossover there. A year out, but I think we'll take that. Jagadish Chandra Bose identified semiconductors in 1894, which is relevant to the development of electronic devices, of course, and the very underpinning of this specialty gases summit in Europe.
I'll allow you that year off in that case then.
It's very tied to the topic, so you need to allow that.
So that's why we're here. That's a few facts relating to the year 1895, 1894 in one case. But let's spend a few minutes and run through what we're going to hear on stage over the next couple of days, shall we?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's be clear for all listeners. This is the second European Specialty Gas Summit from Gasworld. We were in a slightly different venue in Utrecht this time last year for the inaugural event. A lot of popular feedback asking us to continue to expand the event slightly, and yet also home in on the whole semiconductors sector and the spec gas supply chain it so relies upon. So that's exactly what we've done. Backed by popular demand, we're here. We're back in Utrecht for Spec Gas 2.0, as some people are affectionately referring to.
Yeah, and kicking us off tomorrow, first thing in the morning, will be principal sponsor Air Products and Miguel Lope, who will be discussing navigating market dynamics and ensuring there is resilience in specialty gases supply. An important topic to be covering.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to introducing and chairing that keynote. And I have to say, we're delighted to have Air Products as a platinum or headline sponsor of this event, a recognised leader in the field. So that's fantastic. It will be good to hear from Mikkel just how they are navigating those market dynamics. How do you ensure resilience in that spec gas supply chain?
And we've seen the Air Products facility right next to us, so great to see them sponsoring this event and being just next door.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've got a few questions I want to put to Mikkel as well on stage, if we can. I want to ask, what are the key trends shaping customer expectations in the specialty gases space, and how do you ensure continuous innovation and that resilience in the supply chain? What are the biggest operational challenges? So hopefully we'll dive into all of that as well.
And the first of 3 keynotes, so a lot to look forward to. But after that first keynote, we're going to move into session 1 and sort of underline the whole event in this session, and that's our semiconductors and specialty gases session, which we'll be hearing from Lita Schomroy of TechSet, Dr. Jonas Sundqvist, also of TechSet, and Dr. Torsten von Stein of Merck. Looking forward to that one. Yes,
definitely. I think we've got some great perspectives in there to understand what is going on in the semi sector in the world. Actually, we should be quite clear. We need all of that global context, and then we really need to home in on what's happening in Europe. Is this reshoring movement still happening? What does that mean? What does it look like? We've heard various developments in terms of European semiconductor fab investments and expansions. So we'll get into all of that. Looking forward to Jonas's talk as well about the opportunities, not just the state of play, but what are the opportunities and what are the environmental challenges? Because there's a lot of sustainability-led drivers happening at the moment, so we need to get behind those a bit, and that will become an undercurrent across the 2 days as well. And then, as you said, Torsten from Merck, another recognised leader in the electronics gases space, will give us that perspective on the supply chain in Europe in 2025.
And like you say, a lot of the themes that are going to be raised in that session are some that we'll return to later in the event, and I'm sure we'll pick over again in a later podcast and see if those questions really were answered over the next couple of days.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got the live pod, of course, and then we'll also do a review for our listeners.
Yeah, really looking forward to recording those. But moving on to session 2, our second keynote of the day, our second keynote of the event, and we're going to be talking helium and the future that it has in Europe, and that's going to be with Phil Kornbluth, who, we're used to seeing him on our webinars and our podcast and at our events discussing helium and US helium. So it'd be great to get that European perspective on such an important market as well.
I think it will, and again, he will bring that global context. What's really exciting, I think, for this event is, as you said, we're familiar with hearing from Phil on our events, our Helium Summit each year, on webinars, sometimes pre-recorded videos for our other international events. We had a pre-recorded video this time last year, of course, didn't we? And clearly the audience wanted more. Well, this year we're flying Phil in. He's coming in person to come and address this audience and, as you said, get into all of those helium dynamics in Europe. And it's a critical time to be talking about that, because we see sanctions and trade restrictions. We know things are changing. The needle of supply is changing in the helium business. So what better time to get up close and personal with that, courtesy of Phil.
Yeah, and like you say, the current world we live in, the current geopolitical climate, this is such a fast-moving and ever-changing topic. So, like you say, who better to hear from than from the horse's mouth?
Yeah, exactly. And we may not be in shortage at the moment. We're in plentiful supply, if anything, as Phil has told us in the last 12 months. But you just never know what's around the corner, do you?
Well, we saw your risk watch recently on helium, and you say just that. Although we are in plentiful supply, we just don't know.
Yeah, exactly. What prospect of a helium shortage 5.0 in the next 12 months? You're right. That was the focus of our GWGI Risk Watch report. Quite an in-depth report. and we gave it a 3 out of 5 on the risk level. So, yeah, as I said, there could be anything around the corner at any moment.
And listeners can access that report on gasworld.com, can't they?
You can purchase that as a standalone report, or if you're a Gasworld subscriber, that's yours. Go and access it.
And a bit more about Riskwatch that we'll get into later in this.
Yeah, another little tease coming.
Yeah. But for now, let's move on to session 3 of day 1 and the final session of the day. And this is all about advancing the molecule, so really developing on the conversations that we've already had.
It is, yeah. And this, again, picks over some of the undercurrents from the event 12 months ago. Our theme for this event actually is about chemistry and collaboration, chemistry in every sense, chemistry in science, in creating new gas mixtures, for example, but the chemistry in networking and collaboration. So that's really embodied in session 3 here, where we talk about advancing the molecule. We heard from Intel 12 months ago at our event about the need for, let's partner, let's not just have this transactional supply chain where we have a need and you provide something. Let's partner on new materials, new mixtures, new processes. And it was a great call to action. It really resonated with the audience. And we're going to dive into that in session 3 and get behind that. So we're going to find out. We're going to bring David Thompson back, Dr. David Thompson from Intel, to talk about why that's important, what needs to happen next, what specifically is the kind of semiconductor side looking for from the spec gas supply chain. Then we'll also find out, from Air Products, from Harco Vandenberg, about the specialty gases in that changing landscape. And then we'll also hear from Dr. Nicolas Gosset, Air Liquide, on sustainable etching gas solutions. So that session really is quite all-encompassing, I think.
Yeah, and some real big hitters there. We've got Intel, Air Products, and Air Liquide, so not much more you can want.
No, exactly. And when you've had Merck in the first session as well, you've kind of covered all these different sides of the supply chain.
Yeah, and concluding a really excellent day 1, that will be. Of course, we'll have our evening dinner then, but then moving in to day 2, we start with another keynote, and I know this is one that you were very keen on securing and one that you're very happy that we will be having here on stage in a couple of days' time.
Absolutely. This was a big one for us to secure. As you said, I put a lot of effort into this and a lot of hope. Yes, we'll have an opening keynote from Virginia Esley, Chief Operating Officer for Europe and a member of the Executive Management Board. I hope I've got that right. For the Mesa Group, or Mesa SE & Co. Virginia, what's not to like about this? In a really prominent position in the Europe region for Mesa, on the executive board. Great example of female leadership in the industry, female empowerment. And of course, as I just said about those all sides of the specialty gas supply chain reflected or recognised, we've got another one there with Mesa, who also brings global context. So really looking forward to that keynote. We'll get behind the veil, if you like, of what Mesa is doing in that sector and that space, and hopefully some calls to action too.
Exciting, looking forward to it. Moving on to session 4, and
which you're chairing,
which I'll be chairing, will be all about equipment innovation. We had a similar session last year, and it'll be great to invite a brand new host of presenters and a new panel to bring their perspective to that. So we're going to be hearing from Kevin Klotz of WorldCoa, who's going to be discussing the automation of the specialty gases industry. Yes, especially with the development of AI, which we're seeing every day. We'll also be hearing from PDC Machines, Joachim Sabate, discussing emerging applications that are driving the high purity gas and compression tech. So,
which was a topic last year as well.
Areas, yes.
Yep.
And finally, in that session, we'll be hearing from Torsten Kuster of GCE, who we recently had on a webinar, if you remember, and he's going to be discussing digitization and the effective management of gas supply systems, which is an ever important topic when we're talking about reuse, recovery, and really making the most of what you have to hand.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you've got a really great session to chair here, Tom, because technology is constantly shifting and evolving at pace. As you said, we often cover that at Gasworld and on our webinars, so we've got a good handle on how and where those things are moving. Of course, we're all aware of AI and how that's just changing the game on a daily basis for everyone across various sectors and walks of life. So I think you've got a really good session there, having set the scene with the the semiconductor demand side, the spec gas supply chain side, and then getting into that critical tech topic.
And a nice broad topic as well, so expecting plenty of audience questions and interaction for our panel there, and really make the most of those three that we have on stage.
Yeah, absolutely.
Then following that, as we've been saying, we're going to have our live recording of the 1895 podcast. We won't go into too much detail here. We don't want to give too much away. We'll allow our listeners to
continue the tech theme, though.
Continue the tech theme with Rich Brooke of Garrison Ventures. And as we say, that will be published to our feeds in about a week's time. So keep an eye out for that.
But I'll tell you what I can reveal on that, Tom.
Go on,
because we will be talking about recovery and reuse technologies. We've got a poll up and running in the app for all the delegates already. I can tell you right now, just a bit of a tease, this might change as it often does across the events, but argon is currently coming out as the gas of most concern or most need for recovery and reuse. 67% of the vote so far, and the event hasn't even begun yet. Helium close behind with the other 33%. So it'll be really interesting to see how that shakes up over the next 48 hours and what how we pick that apart in that podcast episode.
And as we often see, those figures normally change throughout the day, depending on who's speaking on stage and who's saying what. People's minds will change and shift, and we'll see those numbers fluctuate over the next day or two, and come back to that in that live.
So listen out for that one for the final results.
Have to listen out for that one. And then finally, moving on to our last session of the event, last but by no means least, and this is the sustainability challenge, an important topic in the day and age we're living in now, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I think, I said earlier on when we were discussing the agenda, sustainability is going to be a big undercurrent of this event across the 2 days. And then we'll kind of, I guess, wrap it all up in that concluding session. And it's called the Sustainability Challenge because we clearly do have a challenge on our hands here. We're going to get that take on helium from Rich Brooke. He's going to tell us about innovation in helium and that kind of supply chain sustainability, which is one side. But then one of the big topics, I think, which will keep bubbling under the surface is PFAS. And for anyone that's not aware, that's those forever chemicals, as they're called, that are used in so many technologies and applications. And they, in a nutshell, ultimately they end up in our ecosystem, in our waterways. These substances that are very hard to break down due to their carbon fluorine bond. And there's a lot of focus on these at the minute. Huge topic around the world and right here in Europe in terms of regulation and phasing out. So it was a big topic 12 months ago, if you remember as well. We had a lot of Q&A around PFAS, which we weren't quite ready for. No. So we're giving it a full stage time this time around. We'll really dive into that.
And if you rewind to our very first podcast of this year, you picked out PFAS as one of the hot topics for this year. So like you say, it's great to give that a session and time on our agenda here. And we'll have to dissect that further in an upcoming podcast too, won't we? Such a big topic.
We will indeed. I think we should bring listeners that whole talk pretty much as much as we can. Bring that in one of the episodes post-event because, it's huge. It's the subject of our latest GWGI Riskwatch report as well. We talked about helium earlier. That was the first ever Riskwatch report. The Q2 theme is PFAS and what impact that's going to have on this semiconductor sector. And we'll get those insights from Teresa Kiel of ChemSec. That's the International Chemical Secretariat. We'll also talk in the Riskwatch report about the impact on the gases business with medical oxygen valves and oxygen production in ASUs and so on and so forth. So really a huge topic, a many splintered topic as well.
So listeners, keep an eye out for that Riskwatch report, keep an eye out for that podcast episode because you really can't afford to miss out on information like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And keep an eye out on gasworld.com for our update from our managing editor, Christian Annesley.
Let's now spend the final few minutes of this episode and focus on some specialty gas news because we're, of course, here to discuss specialty gas. perhaps a theme we don't discuss enough on the podcast. So let's spend a few minutes here to go over some of the latest stories, shall we?
Yes, and I feel like that. I don't think we do cover it enough. Just generally, I think there's so much to get into. You could go on all these different tangents on that niche within a niche, as we say. I think as well, it's really topical at the moment, Tom. We talked a few episodes back about the financials for the industry and the state of play, and I talked a lot then about how it feels like the industry is coming back to its core and those traditional growth drivers. Spec gas was and remains one of those hot topic growth drivers. So, really important area to dive into.
And that's why events like this, not to come back to the event, but that's why these are so important to the industry, and why you really can't afford to miss discussions and networking events and presentations such as this.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, everything from the market state of play to the threat, if you like, posed by PFAS, and then all those supply chain topics, which gases are in shortage or they're most concerned about. It's all really important to discuss that and network and collaborate. Absolutely.
But let's get back into the news. And the latest spec gas story we've had on our website is Materion set to buy Korean
tantalum assets.
Yes, for chips business. So this is the US electrics company that have been involved in a deal to acquire the manufacturing assets that will be related to metal titanium from the Korean semiconductor manufacturer Kansol.
Yes, that's right. Yep. And it's just the latest in a number of different asset swaps and acquisitions going on at the moment, both of companies and materials. So yeah, it shows how the supply chain is moving around at the moment. It's a good example. Yeah.
And we should direct listeners towards gasworld.com if they want to read any of these stories in full. They'll all be there for subscribers to view and read at their pleasure.
Yeah, sign up for our Helium and Spec Gas Spotlight newsletter as well, fortnightly newsletter every Wednesday with all the latest that's going on in the spec gas space. Some interesting stories to cherry pick from there as well, Tom. There's always some helium stories going on in there, isn't there?
There is.
I think we can see something to do with Helix targeting US investors.
Yes, so this is the helium development firm. Helix Exploration is going to be targeting US investors by listing on the OTCQB venture market from the 29th of May. So that was, about a week ago now. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out and see, what investors come on board from that listing.
Yep, and always good to keep on top of those, those investment drives and the state of play in the new helium explorers. I can also see another story on that newsletter, Tom. Global Gases Group upgrading its helium facility in Doha.
Yes, and that's Dubai-based Global Gases Group. We've had them at our events many times. They've opened an upgraded helium filling facility in Doha and expanding on their operation in the Middle East. So that's a big step for them. And
yes, constantly moving forward and building their footprint, aren't they?
Big player out there.
Yeah, and increasingly so. Yes, it's been great to see that transformation there. And then we said we've got a keynote from Virginia Esley here from the Messer Group, and Messer's been busy on the US side as well, hasn't it?
Yes, opening a specialty gas facility in Pennsylvania. So they've opened the new electronics and specialty gas product laser mix facility in Coolbag Township, which is in Pennsylvania. Yeah. I wonder if she'll be mentioning that tomorrow.
Perhaps that might be in that global context. Yeah. So plenty going on. That's just a few stories from the latest newsletter that went out from Gasworld last week. There's so much more besides. There's the Spec Gas Zone, of course.
Yes. And another newsletter going out tomorrow.
Absolutely, yeah. And we must not forget, there's other stories as well that listeners and viewers can go and find on there. Think about Infinium and its new semiconductor fab in Dresden in Germany. That's been in the headlines quite a bit. We talked about it a bit at this event last year. It's moving through all the steps forward that it needs to. It's got the funding confirmed. I think, I might be wrong, but I think over 900 million euros contribution towards that in localized funding. So all of that reshoring and expansion activity is ongoing, and that's fantastic. And bit of a spoiler, Tom, should we go there?
I think we can.
I think we should.
You've mentioned it half already, haven't you?
So that's going on in Dresden, in Germany.
What else is going on in Dresden?
Going on in Frankfurt in Germany in around 12 months' time. We'll take this event to Frankfurt. Spec Gas 3.0, the European Specialty Gas Summit 2026 will be in Frankfurt. Stunning location, which I can't pronounce off the top of my head right now, but it is befitting of a growing event and a growing hot topic market.
Well, there we go. An exclusive for our podcast listeners, and one that those attending the event today don't even know yet.
They're not even aware of it. We'll break it on stage tomorrow.
Oh, there we go.
A world exclusive.
A world exclusive. And on that note, I think we should pack up here and start setting up. I can see the team moving things around and getting on with the setup. So perhaps we should go and join them.
Yeah, let's go and see our sponsor as they set up.
Great. So thanks for listening, and do be sure to like, follow and share the 1895 podcast, and we'll see you again next week.